bright. I can barely see what you guys can see. We've got Noor and Sevi with me today, and we've got an early morning Saturday car meet. GT4 crew checking in. How good do they look? Ooh yeah. So Noor, obviously Sevi and I have had our cars for about 2 months now. I got mine a week before he did. That's Sevi's. But Noor picked his up 2 days ago. And it's kind of like a middle spec between Sevi and mine. Sevi and I, mine and Sevi's. He's got the gold Aurum wheels, comfort seats, manual, but guards red. Whereas I've got comfort seats, manual, and Sevi's got bucket seats, PDK, but guards red. So it's kind of like the spec in the middle between ours. Yeah, guards red sandwich, I've called our group chat. But yeah, welcome to the video, everybody. As you can see by the title, whatever I'm gonna title it, it's about making the GT4 louder, but not necessarily louder. Let me explain. So, I popped down to Porsche specialists yesterday and installed the Cargraphic valve controller onto the GT4. The problem with the 718 GT4s is that although you have a valve controller or an exhaust button in the center console, if you've got that pressed and you've got that turned on, the valves will be open under 1,000 revs, but after you drive off, the valves will close and not open again until over 4,000 revs. So what it basically means is, if you're pottering around town, driving very slowly, it's actually, the valves are closed, even though you've got the button pressed, and it makes the driving experience not as fun. You can't hear the exhaust as much. You can obviously hear it because it's quite loud behind me in the cabin, but if you wind the windows down, you can't hear the exhaust because the valves are closed. So it makes driving slowly around town very boring, and you have to basically floor it and redline it everywhere you go in order to hear that sweet 6-pot. So with the valve controller, with a tiny little module or fob, I can now keep my valves permanently open. And do I want to give it away this early on in the video? Yeah, probably. It's made a massive difference. It's completely changed the experience of the car. It's made the car very boomy low down now, and it actually means I don't have to redline the car as often in order to hear the exhaust. I can drive around at 2,000, 3,000 revs and I can still hear the car behind, the exhaust behind me. It's absolutely changed the experience. It's probably the #1 mod that you should do if you've got a GT4. It costs £500 in total, including labour. The Cargraphic controller costs £300. It's perfect. Let me show you what the fob looks like. Oh, look how good they look. That's like a Facebook cover photo right there. Look at that. Maybe I'll screenshot that for the thumbnail. But basically, we come here, this is how small the fob is, and it fits perfectly in the non-smokers pack that I've got, this little cubby hole. This is how small the fob is, and I can cover it up if I want, but I keep it open and I place it in there, and #1 makes the valves permanently open, and #2 takes it back to stock. So the reason I wanted the valve controller is because, and I'll flip the camera back around, the reason I wanted the valve controller is because I want the ability to close the valves and go back to stock as and when I need to, when I drive through dodgy areas, when it's very early in the morning. I don't want to be waking up my neighbours, because a lot of people just said, you know, just unplug the valves. First of all, it's not a 911. The engine is very hard to get to, being in the middle of the car, so I wasn't comfortable doing that. And secondly, I want the option to turn it off and on, for the reasons I've just mentioned. So for £500, this has solved all my problems, and I'm going to try my best to convey the audio and the sound of the exhaust. It's not going to come across great. I'm going to try my best. Really, the only things I can show is we're going to use Nor's car because his is perfectly stock to compare the two. The only thing that I can really show is him driving off and you being able to hear the valves close as he goes over 1,000 revs, and in mine it keeps them permanently open, and so you'll be able to hear my engine the whole time as I drive off away from you. That's the best thing, I think, the only thing that I can think of to kind of demonstrate the two. I took a couple videos yesterday. The volume just doesn't really come across in video. It's much louder in real life, but from a driving experience, I've been driving around with the windows down a lot and not having to redline it, and being able to keep within the 3,000, 4,000 rev range, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, and still hear the exhaust behind me. So let's do some rev clips, and I'll try my best to get it to come across for you. Big shout out to Nor. Congratulations, mate, for picking up your car today, but big shout out to him for letting me use his car to compare a stock versus Cargraphic controller. I'll link all the information down in the description as well. I'm going to start the car and then I'm going to use the controller and just kind of flick between valves fully open and then stock, so aka turning the valve controller off, and then showing how the exhaust button on the center console sounds exactly the same as if I have the valves fully open on the Cargraphic fob. So the valves are already permanently open from the Cargraphic controller from when I drove here. So the startup will be loud, in theory. Right. So they're fully open at the moment. This is with them off. And then with it fully open. Hear the differences in the tone. So I give it a couple revs with them fully open. And then I can go back to stop by pressing the second button. So now the valves are closed because the exhaust button is off on the center console. If I now press the exhaust button on the center console, you can see they've opened, and now this is the same as if I permanently kept them open on the valve controller. When you're doing stationary revs, it's exactly the same. The difference of this only really makes sense when you're driving. So we'll do some driving now. Alright, thank you very much for watching. Big shout out to Nor for lending his car for the video, and a big thank you and shout out to Sevi for being the cameraman whilst we compare the two. I didn't want to, it just can get a bit monotonous of just non-stop driving back and forth, but hopefully it comes across on camera. And if you ever see me at car meets or whatever, or if you ever know someone who has a Cargraphic valve controller installed, you'll be able to tell in real life the difference between that and a stock one. I also want to say it's a great mod to do without having to spend ridiculous amounts of money. A back box on a GT4 can cost around about £6,000, £6 grand, £7 grand, depending on kind of what vendor you go for, Cargraphic, JCR, etc, etc. So this is kind of like a cheap mod for 500 quid. I've still got the stock system, but it's just releasing a lot of noise. It's very loud anyway from factory. It's just the valves causing the problem, or most of the issue anyway. So thank you very much for watching. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, like it, comment, the usual, and I'll see you later in the next video.